The Young Turks has been given dramatic, exclusive footage from the site of the North Dakota protests over the construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Drone footage that shows that despite what the Justice Department, the Army Corps of Engineers, and President Obama said that the construction should halt near the sources of water in that area, it apparently has been ongoing. Let's watch.
The drone is inching right over the drill pad that Dakota Access Pipeline has built very hastily and quickly in secrecy. This drill pad looks approximately half a mile from the main water source, Missouri River, which flows into Lake Oahe. Lake Oahe is the main water source for the Native Americans and millions of others. Surrounding this drill pad is barbed wire, presumably to keep the protectors away from it. The police have served as human buffers, allowing the company to nearly finish the pipeline in the dark. Would you be available for a quick interview, officer? Now the question is, does Dakota Access disregard the Department of Justice and Army Corps of Engineers and drill under the water? Or does this construction stop, leaving the Department of Justice and President Obama as the final arbiters to whether they could drill under the water? President Obama, Department of Justice, Army Corps of Engineers, it's time to get people down here. We cannot operate on the honor system. You need to observe what they're doing to make sure they are not drilling under this water, because they are a heartbeat away from the water. Get somebody down here now.
So let me give you the context of that. The Department of Justice and Army Corps of Engineers told the Dakota Access Pipeline, hey, we would prefer that you did not drill within 20 miles of the Missouri River. Now, as we tell you all the time on the Young Turks, when you tell a company that they shouldn't do something, they go, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, no, we're going to continue building that pipeline.
These are concrete self-regulations.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah. So that self-regulation was immediately ignored because companies don't care what your feelings are, what you think. If there's a law, there's a law. And sometimes even that gets violated, of course, right? But they're not going to listen to you asking them to do it. It's such an Obama move to ask them. Okay, now, when you get to the river, they are not allowed to drill into the river.
Yes.
So that's why in Jordan's reporting there, we see for the first time that they're actually a half mile from the river. So he's asking, well, is the Obama administration going to respond and send anybody, a soul down there, to make sure that they're not drilling into the river like they're not supposed to?
Well, the interesting thing is there are hundreds of police officers, and it looks like a law might be broken soon, but they're preoccupied with some other things.
No, but that's the interesting part of this, isn't it? I mean, they've got all those military-style vehicles there. They got tremendous arms there, as we've shown in other instances. And it's all pointing towards the protesters who call themselves the water protectors. But wait a minute, if they're not the ones breaking the law and the company might be, shouldn't you also be looking the other way? Shouldn't you say, wait a minute now? But it seems like as if the government is working for corporations, doesn't it?
That's crazy talk.
So who's really in charge here?
Well, and look, up until, I mean, look, we have the voluntary part, which was not presented initially as voluntary from where I was sitting when we initially reported on it, and then we have the you can't do it part. And so at the very least, the voluntary part like, yeah, they could abide by it, or they have shareholders, including Donald Trump, by the way, that want to see a return on this. And time is money, and simply waiting and not moving would cost them money. And so fuck off with the self-regulations from their point of view, because those people want to see progress, obviously.
Corporations...
That's why it cannot be optional at that point. It means nothing.
No, so we're going to get into Obama's statement here in a second. But that's why Obama has, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but misunderstands the nature of corporations and, accordingly, the current state of politics in America. Corporations are not people. They don't have morality. They're not patriotic. You can't beseech them, right? There is no like, hey, now look, let me rationalize this with you. No, wait, which way am I making more money? I'm making a penny more in this direction? I'm not interested in your opinion, even if you're the President of the United States of America. I'm not interested in your suggestion.
Yeah.
You're not going to talk me into it.
Yeah.
I am a machine who's designed to make every last penny that I can. So get out the way, get out the way. Now, Obama, listen to this statement. Now this news is going to talk to him, and they're going to ask him about, hey, are you going to weigh in here? By the way, you're the one who said they can't drill in the river, right? So let's go to President Obama now and get his views.
One thing the candidates aren't really talking about is the Dakota Access Pipeline. Is that something that you would consider intervening in? People have called for your administration to make a call.
We're monitoring this closely, and I think as a general rule, my view is that there is a way for us to accommodate sacred lands of Native Americans. And I think that right now the Army Corps is examining whether there are ways to reroute this pipeline
So that's a
in a way.
right.
So we're going to let it play out for several more weeks and determine whether or not this can be resolved in a way that I think is properly attentive to the traditions of the first Americans.
You can afford to do that because letting it just play out is good for both sides, not one side. It's not better for one side to just let it keep going the way it's going.
No, that doesn't mean anything. It's a classic Obama statement. What does it mean? Play out. I don't mean to be Bill O'Reilly here. What does it mean, play us out? We'll do it live.
Continue construction, I imagine.
So, but no, seriously, I don't know what that means. We're going to let it play out. You mean that you're going to let them drill when they're right next to the river, which you said they couldn't do?
Yeah.
Or do you mean they're not allowed to drill, so we're going to wait for a couple of weeks for the U.S., for the Army Corps of Engineers to make a decision? Which one is it?
And what's taking them so long? And why can't they put out a draft decision a few days before the election like other federal departments have? So, like, we have to acknowledge that we're a week away from the election. So letting it play out for a few weeks is obviously has to do with the election. So there are two theoretical ways that he could be doing this. It could be one, in fantasy land, that he wants to shut down the pipeline, but he's worried about angering people who care about economic development, energy, blah, blah, blah. And so he wants to wait until after the election to shut it down.
Yeah, the conservatives
Or-
believe that.
Yeah,
You guys,
exactly,
you guys don't know
exactly.
Obama at all. You don't know him at all.
Yeah. Now, the other way is that he just wants to let it go, but he doesn't want to make it clear that he wants to let it go until after the election. Now, look, Obama hasn't always gone in this direction. Like, theoretically, we were very worried about his position on Keystone XL, and then he ended up, and there's a lot of explanations why, not going with it as hardcore as we thought that he would. But that second answer definitely seems more likely based on the evidence right now and what we know about Barack Obama.
So it's so frustrating. If he means I'm not going to send anyone, I'm not going to monitor the corporation, I'm going to
Well, he's not sending anyone.
Well, yeah. So I'm going to
He could have already done it.
I'm going to keep it on Scout's honor, and we have footage. If we do, right now we have footage of them being a half mile from the river. If we find a way that, and by the way, why are the cops protecting the guys who might be breaking the law? Because they say don't do the footage. Don't go anywhere near them. Reporters that are near the pipeline will get arrested. It's happened before, right? So, wait a minute. Why are you protecting the guys who might be on the verge of breaking the law? So it's because money. Citizens, protesters, protectors, water. I don't care. The state says I don't care. I'm going to set up my military vehicles to protect the guys who I should actually be monitoring.
Yeah. So the sick thing is that obviously, like we're doing the hypotheticals, but obviously it's because this is an energy company. On the other side, you have water protectors. If it was literally a water company, if Nestle or whatever was on the other side, then you might have the cops protecting both sides. But because it's just citizens who are worried about just the future of their civilization in that area, then they're not as important, unfortunately. And we talked last week about the fact that there was originally the plan to have the pipeline go more towards Bismarck, but they were worried about threats to water there. And so now it's down under Lake Oahe, where they say, oh, no, it no longer is any threat of actually spilling. If it's no threat of spilling, then put it back up there near Bismarck. Or I would say ideally shut it down entirely. But at the very least, even for the company, at what point does it not become pragmatic to simply move the fucking thing?
Okay, so two quick things here. One, Bismarck, there's two reasons why they moved it away from Bismarck, two potential reasons. One is there's more people near Bismarck. Two is they're white people, and they're not Native Americans who we're used to walking all over. Okay, but either way, what they're saying is, we know it might spill.
Yeah,
That's why we don't win any.
course.
So take the race out of it if you want. It might spill and affect more people near Bismarck. So when we say we know it's not going to spill, how would you possibly know it's not going to spill? We just had a pipeline explode on Monday in Alabama. Killed a person, injured 5 others.
We reported last week on literally hundreds and hundreds of unreported oil spills in that region in just the last couple of years.
And if you know it's not going to spill, put it right through the middle of Bismarck, right?
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to do that, are you? Okay, so, and then the second part of this is, look, we don't know that they're drilling into the water yet. But if they are, so maybe they won't. Maybe they'll say, oh, what Obama means is let it play out, like, let's just stop building, right? But if they start drilling into the water, can I then get everybody in the world to agree right now? Like, will conservatives, because they say, hey, that's the law and order.
Law and
order, right? Can we all agree? Because right now conservatives will say, oh, they're not going to drill. You guys are being sensationalistic. The mainstream media, oh, they're not going to drill. Don't be ridiculous. There's a rule saying they're not allowed to drill. They're not going to drill. Okay, good, great. I hope you're right, okay? But if they drill, can we agree that the cops should turn around and actually monitor the company and walk them back since they're the ones violating the law?
Yeah, I want to see a bulldozer cockpit filled up with tear gas. I don't think I'm going to see that.
Yeah.
But also, and we know exactly what would happen if they did actually drill, because I've been covering for 4.5 years Obama's speeches and interviews. You've been covering for far longer than that. There are at least 2 Obamas. There's dignified, careful Obama, and then there's fired up, progressive Obama on the campaign trail. We know which one that was, and we know what that means for what he would do if they do actually drill under the water.
Yeah. They're waiting until the election, and that Obama, he almost had a smirk on his face, like, that's cute, the thing of the pipeline, right? We're going to decide before the election. No, we're afraid we're going to be called liberals if we say anything before the election. You know how Democrats are. I mean, wouldn't want to be progressive. That'll hurt us with the votes. No, we're not going to say anything. Now let's go to the last Obama clip, because again, it's such a classic Obama move.
Is there something to be done about the way protesters are being treated right now, though? They're getting sprayed with rubber bullets. We're seeing some kind of shocking footage.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging situation. I think that my general rule when I talk to governors and state and local officials, whenever they're dealing with protests, including, for example, during the Black Lives Matters protests, is there's an obligation for protesters to be peaceful, and there's an obligation for authorities to show restraint. And I want to make sure that as everybody is exercising their constitutional rights to be heard, that both sides are refraining from situations that might result in people being hurt.
Is that what we've seen?
No, that's such a classic Obama move. That's the Mubarak move. So when there was the revolution in Egypt, Obama does a press conference going, we are with our longtime ally Mubarak, and we support him. And of course, democracy must reign, so the protesters are absolutely right. You're like, wait, they're on opposite sides, right? So in this case, look, don't get me wrong, I get it. Like, if he actually followed through on that and said, hey, cops, don't fire the rubber bullets at peaceful protesters with their prayer sticks. And hey, protesters, don't set fires to blah, 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 right? You say, okay, that's balanced. There's nothing wrong with that, right? And we don't want violence on either side. But if that's your way of saying, we're not going to do anything about the cops, but I'm going to basically tut the protesters and go, hey, now remember, I mean, there's no real evidence that you guys have fired any shots. In fact, we just caught an instigator yesterday with a rifle and a bandana covering his face among the protesters. And so we have evidence to the contrary. We have the cops that have fired the tear gas and rubber bullets. But when you say it's even and it isn't even, well, what you've said is state violence doesn't count. Only if you raise your heads, it counts.
They're still investigating how exactly you fire the prayer stick. They're going to figure it out. It's an interesting device. But especially when this is something that the mainstream press hasn't been covering, isn't interested in. They can't fit into the schedule. They got to talk about the Comey thing for a couple more hours per day. And then the president speaks about it, and that's the way he pitches it, then that's the only thing people know about it, unless they're paying attention to alternative sources of media. This is, oh, well, you know, maybe they're being violent, maybe the protesters are being violent, and that's the message that gets out there.
Okay, last thing. President Obama, remember, is supposed to be a progressive. So if he wanted to highlight progressive issues, he's got the largest megaphone in the world. He goes to Now This or ABC or CNN. Those guys, of course, aren't going to ask him. At least Now This asked him, bless their hearts, right? And he can say, no, I want to be very clear here. Their rights in that area are very important. We're looking into the Fort Laramie Treaty as to figure out whose land that actually is, because Native Americans have gotten the short end of the prayer stick for all these years, right? And all this time. And if there's a treaty that has been signed, we're going to abide by it. Now, at the same time, if the courts rule, and I get this part, right? If the courts rule that, and they've come to a conclusion that the company actually has all the land, and we've gone through all of it, and we've gone through our environmental impact statement, which they have it in this case, and we've gone through all these different things, then okay, we're going to go forward on that. Exactly. But if you've got to at least mention the progressive case, because if you don't mention the progressive case, whether it's about, hey, wait, I told them not to drill there, or hey, this might actually be Native American land, or hey, there are actually leaks. There's leaks all the time. Hey, there was an explosion just yesterday, you know, when he was giving this interview. The day before, there was an explosion in a pipeline. But the president never makes the progressive case. The best you can hope for from the president is a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Well, if the Democratic president doesn't make the progressive case, who will?
This is what's sad. This started early. 2009, Professor Henry Louis Gates, Harvard. The whole thing about him not getting into his house, the police harassed him. Obama came out pretty straightforward. He's like, oh, I know this. I've seen this movie a million times. And he came out and said what he thought and what he felt. There was an avalanche of all this horrible thing. I can't believe this president's so biased. We do this, jump to conclusions. And that was the beginning. That was in 2009. He'd just gotten in. So after this many years, he's a little bit like, oh, that's just the way I answer these things. I don't want to ruffle any feathers. There's people who are going to yell at me. Oh, my God, they're going to yell at me. It's like he's almost beaten down. It's really sad now that it's gotten to this point.
Chastened.
It started early. And then every once in a while, it's like did you say something to offend me? You better sit back down. And he's here now. And I watched that thing, and I was like, what happened? It's been 8 years in the making.
I mean, look, you know my theory. He's not actually a progressive. He represents his donors, like every other politician. He's not any kind of savior, right? All that hope and change stuff was just marketing, right? But if you really are a progressive, what are you waiting for? You know you've got a couple of months left as president. Can you at least make a progressive case? Even if you're not going to do anything and you say, oh, the Republicans are blocking me. They're not blocking your microphone. You're choosing not to use your microphone.
We know
and by the way, JR's scenario is the best case scenario, that you're a real progressive, but you're too intimidated to fight back.